Hey everyone, it's Jason. Welcome to another Firefly board game. This is Misbehavin, a factions deck building game. I love Firefly stuff. I love deck building, so this is definitely a must-have for me. Going through it though, it actually is a very interesting game. I will just start off by saying it's deck building-ish. So if you're not, just in case you're not familiar with deck building for whatever reason, the basic concept of it is you get some games like Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, which are constructible card games. You build your deck in advance and you play against somebody. In a deck building game, everyone starts out generally with like a same or very similar type of hand of cards, very basic cards at the beginning, usually just cards for buying stuff. And maybe like doing like one or two simple actions. And then as the game goes, you purchase more cards from some sort of marketplace. And you use that to either purchase more cards and keep making your deck better, or to defeat other things just always depends on what type of deck building it is. And defeat other cards or players or however it's going to work. And therefore every game, everyone at the beginning of the game, everyone starts with a very similar deck. By the end of every game, everyone should have a very different deck. And that's how you build your deck up over the game. You start with like 10 cards, and by the end of the game, you might have 30 cards. This plays fairly bit different. It still maintains that element of throughout the game, you will be purchasing cards and making your deck better. But it has a few little twists in there that make it very interesting. The first twist is that everybody is going to have their own specific faction deck. She'll be playing of one of 4 different factions. Either you'll be playing as Serenity, which is obviously like the Firefly, Malcolm Reynolds' crew. Eve's Down, which is Badger, and some of like the kind of like higher gangs around there. Niska, of course, evil-ish or manipulative, gangster type guy, or you'll be playing as the Alliance. So each player will have their own unique starting deck instead of having they'll have lots of the similar effects. But they all have very different stuff. One might have more characters, one might have more actions, one might have a ship, one might not. So that's kind of interesting as well. The other big unique thing we're gonna get is there's actually a big tableau. So this is what makes it very interesting, because most deck building games, you play the game as you play your hand of cards. You do whatever you do, then they'll go to your discard pile, then you redraw a new hand of cards. You do this for the most part, except a lot of times you'll want to play cards down here, whether they be assets in your asset area, or your command area, you can play either characters or items. Then these stay out until you use them for either their intended effect, or you bring them up into the display area, which means you're actually using them for purchasing or something else. So you're going to get, it's kind of neat because you actually get some cards that you can keep out and you can use when you need to or later instead of having to hope to redraw them. And the other thing that's also part of this is up in this top corner is there's a number of points for either 2, 3, or 4 players. So it's either 13, 11, or 12 points depending on how many players you have. And this is actually how many power worth of cards you want down here. So not just playing cards as a way to hold them for later, you're also playing them as an attempt to gain enough power to win the objective of the game. And then so that way you might play these cards down to use them, but you don't want to use them all the time because you're going to need to save them up to eventually win the game. But on the same fact, your opponents will be attacking some of your cards, trying to get them off your board. So it takes a unique twist of between being a deck builder where you're drawing new hand every turn, getting new cards, to also having cards that stay on the table every turn. So it's very cool. And then besides every character having a unique deck, they're also going to have unique display areas. So you have a deck on that side, recycle on this side. So this is side 8 for the Serenity crew. And then if we look at the next one, so now we have Badger's Crew, or Eves Down, which will have the little hat symbol. He has a different setup here, so this is actually kind of neat. So, like, both of them have 4 asset areas, so they have 4 asset areas at all time. But if we flip to the bottom side, is Serenity here has 5 spots on the bottom, but only 4 of them can be characters, and 4 of them can be items, but 1 is specifically only for items, and 1 is specifically only for characters. So you can kind of get limited on what you can play where, to an extent. Whereas Eves Down has all 4 spots, can only be all characters or items. So Serenity might have a little bit of advantage there. They can have 1 extra character out and have 4 characters, and they can still have 1 item. But then the other 2 ones play a little bit differently. Niska's here in red, ends up with 5 assets. He gets a lot more assets, but now he only has 4 spots in the bottom, with 3 being characters and 3 being items. So only 2 crossover. So he doesn't have as much crossover there. So he's going to try and win, probably playing more assets. And then the Alliance just gets everything, because they're the Alliance. They're a bunch of cheaters. They have 5 assets and 5 slots with 3 characters and 3 items. But it also means they only have 1 slot here that can cross over between item and character. So it's going to make each, again, with their own specific decks and their own tableaus, play very differently. On the opposite side for B, all 4 are the same, where there's all 5 assets, all 5 are characters in them. This is some of the story objectives in the game. There's some episodes we can play, which are a side thing. Or if you just want a little bit easier game. So it might be something we're starting with, to just everyone starts off on the exact same foot. Might help out. But yeah, so if I flip them all over to side B, they're all going to have the 5 and 5. So it's going to be the same. So it's kind of cool that they did give you the option for that. But those are those boards. We're going to get a couple other boards in the game. We are going to have the main deck, where you buy cards from. This is the marketplace. We're going to have stuff from the core deck, the core planets, the border planets, and the rim planets. So you put your deck down there, and you'll have 2 available cards at each time. So it's kind of neat, because again, most deck builders either fall into 1 or 2 categories. Either they fall into, like, they have 1 main pile, and then just have like 5 or 6 cards, such as like Marvel Legendary, DC deck building, or they have multiple piles where every card's the exact same, such as something like Dominion. Did that way back in the day. Probably still technically does it. So this one, yeah, you get 3 different decks. You're all gonna have different cards in them, but you only have 2 available at a time, and they're gonna keep rotating. So you're gonna always get fresh marketplace cards to play as. And I'm losing tokens here. Then the other half of that is the supply deck. So these kind of work more like the Dominion style. Sorry, I'm just losing tokens. I'm off my board here. So this works more like Dominion, where it's always the same pile every time. So there's always going to be a deck for shiny cards, always going to be a deck for the black cards. Then out of the other, I forgot how many, I think there's like 10 different decks. You'll have 1 that has to be a deal, 1 that has to be a fight, 1 that has to be a maneuver. So every game, and then the 4th one can be any one of the 3. So every game, you're always going to have access to one of these 3 different options of cards to play, but there's multiple different decks that use them. So just as a quick example, we have like Crazy Ivan here's a maneuver type card. So that'll go in that pile, but then we could get Full Burn, which is the same thing. But we could have Pavler, which is a deal card. Then there's the black and shiny, which are always going to be there. Or Double Cross, which is a fight card. But you can rotate them as well. So kind of, again, not only with a normal deck building game are you going to constantly change and get different decks every time, this, you can also change these 4 decks around every couple of games, and you're going to have some couple different options here. So that's actually a really neat aspect as well. There are some other really cool stuff in here I haven't even gotten to. So all my tokens are falling out. So we're going to have verse tokens for each different group. They're going to have 6 each. These are actually used for various effects and abilities throughout the game. You do certain things to earn these. You can spend them as kind of like special currency. They're actually has some pretty powerful effects, but again, with the whole faction ideas, each player has different effects. It's not the same thing for each player. And they always have some plus for powers, plus the fight icon if we're going to fight someone. And then we have little credits, little tiny monies for various things you're trying to earn. And all these are falling out. So on the back side, there's a defense on this one. Otherwise, all the rest of the tokens are the same, except the Alliance have warrants on the back. And they all just keep falling out of my little box here. Or little tablet. Alright, so that's the basis of the game. We do get 2 different books. We have the regular rule book, and then we have the quick start guide. The quick start guide is really fantastic for learning the basics of how, once you've read kind of how to play it, it explains it very well. Now, I'm not going to go through every single word of this exact thing, but we do kind of look over the overview of the game. Yeah, so you control your tableau, you have a power value, so you want to get those. When you reach the acquired power level to win, you must announce it immediately. You cannot surprise player by starting your turn with the win. So if at this point I have 13 power, so 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, I have enough to win. I have every other player going to play a turn, finish off their turns, have a chance to try and get rid of some of my cards. But I have to let them know it's going to happen. So that's kind of cool there. Alright. So setup, I'm just going to kind of look at the setup board, kind of explain. Basically, each player will start with 1 credit, 1 verse token, their special card, their deck, and their board. And then you set up all the cards like that. Very simple. And then player section, we kind of talked about them. We have our assets and our command areas. Must play assets to assets. Must play command cards to the command, which can be characters, items. Just have to be in the correct slot. The display area. The area above your board is where you will play your cards for recruitment, fights, deals, and maneuvers. This is not part of your tableau, but dedicated area for your play cards. Be immediately discarded when the effects resolve. So card categories, we have assets, characters, and items, and then supply cards, we have maneuvers and actions. Faction and market cards have shields in the top right corner. Supply cards have a circle in the top right corner. Yeah, so just showing that different things on there. Faction and market cards are played to your tableau. It can be a character, item, or asset. Assets can be played any number of things, from ships to locations, even concepts like you can't take the sky away from me. Assets can only be played from your hand to the asset area of your tableau. Characters now can only be played to your command area of your tableau. So you want to kind of watch what you're playing there. Supply cards can never be played to your tableau. They're only played in the display area once their effect has been resolved. They always return to the supply board. So this also makes this very interesting. You buy cards from the market from one of the core, rim, or border decks. They make your deck better, but if you buy cards from that supply, which you can always see what cards on that deck, they're always going to be the same one. They're one-time use. When you're playing through, it's the only return to supply board if they're played to display. If a supply card is discarded from a player's hand, you just place it into the recycle bin. So if you decide, for example, like if you have Crazy Ivan, you decide, oh, this isn't going to really help me this turn, I can use it later. Just don't play it. At the end of the turn, it'll get discarded, go back into your deck. Then there's some different icons. You have the 4 faction icons: Alliance, Serenity, Niska, and Eavesdown. This supply deck showing it's either from the menu, it's from the supply, will have a little crate on it. Then below it, it'll tell you if it's an item or a maneuver or a character or whatever. And then the 3 different market decks. Card attributes. Let's look at these quick before we get into too much of them. So, each one's going to kind of made up of a couple different ones. They're going to have deal, fight, ship, location, or maneuver. Because there will be things that will reference them as well. And then you can trigger cards. Many effects call it a trigger card. Just means turn it sideways. You know, tapping, exhausting, all that stuff. Now, here's also another really neat thing. There are some episodes in the game you can play, so where you can actually switch up the deck will determine which market cards are used. Circle, square, and triangle. So it's also neat because even your main market deck can change up depending on how you play. So someone can't be like, oh, I always get this one card, and I use these 3 cards for my combo. You play certain episodes, they might not be available. So let's break down how a card actually looks. So in the top one, up in the top is a faction or requirement icon. You can pick up a specific fraction to use its verse tokens to influence to gain that card, or a requirement to use the card. So like that one, it's showing it has Niska at the top. Doesn't mean you have to be the Niska player to use it. It just means you're gonna end up being able to spend your verse tokens to buy them. Attributes will tell you what type of card it is. So in the bottom corner, we have 3, which is power. This is power used in fights. This is basically how much damage it does, and for the victory condition. 4 is your cost/defense number. So the shield up at the top, or the circle on the supply cards, will be the cost it takes to purchase the card, or if you're fighting the card, someone wants to fight you, how much defense or how much health it has. Your 5 is your influence, the number used for recruitment and for deals. And then 6 is its origin, and 7 is its type. We have various abilities in there. So here it says, an attribute appears in the top left corner of a card. It means you must have that attribute in your tableau in order to use this card's effect. So for example, use Crazy Ivan, it shows a ship, means you have to have a ship in your tableau. So you can purchase Crazy Ivan, you just can't use it unless you have a ship in there. So that does make it a little bit different for some people. Triggered abilities have a little lightning icon, so they tap it or exhaust it, turn it sideways. Innate abilities just have specific times they trigger. During your turn, we have 4 actions. Start your turn by resetting any triggered cards. There are 4 types of actions a player can take on their turn. Or 4 types of actions you can play. So you can play a card to your tableau, trigger a card in your tableau, pick a fight, or make a deal. So there's your activations, the stuff you can do. You have recruitment, displaying discard cards with influence to gain new cards to your deck. Verse acquisition, earn 1 of your verse tokens. And spending verse, take actions with your verse cards, spending your verse tokens. These actions can be performed in any order other than spending verse, which can only be performed once per turn, unless some other effects grabs you another action. Alright, so at the card management, at the end of your turn, you must discard cards left in your hand. Discard any card from your tableau. So if you want to, so for example, if I only had 1 item slot over here left open, I could discard that so I could potentially play another one. Must draw 5 cards. For each triggered card you leave in your tableau, draw 1 fewer cards. This is also a very neat mechanic. So that means if you use your abilities on your cards here, you're not going to have as many cards to draw next turn. So having 4 cards out in your tableau and then using their abilities every turn might get you some good bonuses, but it also means your next turn might be crap because you'll have 1 card. And if you can't draw cards, reshuffle your deck. So yeah, activations we did do is play a card in your tableau, trigger an ability, pick a fight, or make a deal. Recruitment, pay, does that. Okay, we kind of got some of that, so we'll go over those a little bit more here. In the overview of activating, each your turn you have 1 activation opportunity. Cards and effects give you an additional activations at any activation you don't use or lost when you're playing. So there are 4 ways to do it. So yes, you get basically one action per turn. And you can use it to either play a card to your tableau, and then immediately use its trigger ability. Trigger a card that was already there. Play cards to your display area to pick a fight. Place a fight token on the card. Target the card's defense cost. All fight cards with their power. Use your power of an attacker may defend using both fight cards. Tie goes to the attacker. Reward gets to draw a card and gain a credit. or gain verse. And then you can nab cards or defeat them. And then 4, you can play cards as a displayer to make a deal. Use this card's influence. Use this card's influence, adds more influence from other cards. So it's kind of neat. So I'll get into it a little bit more, but we have in a fight, all cards must have a fight icon, so I have to have that. And if you're making a deal, your first card must have the little deal icon. So yeah, we're going to get into those a little bit more here. So playing cards in your tableau is pretty darn simple, right? May use an activation to play a card from your hand to your tableau, asset, character, item. If it has a lightning bolt ability for a trigger, you can use that immediately. You do not have to. You have the option. If you decide to trigger a card, turn it sideways to show that it's been triggered. That card cannot be used for their influence, power, or typically used again for any ability. If the card's not triggered as a set, cards will reset automatically. And then we have triggering a card, so you can opt out to use one that's already there. So it's always something you can do there. Pretty simple. So pick a fight. So this is kind of, again, these are some really cool mechanics for the game. So pick a fight you can either nab or dispatch. The fight lets you nab characters, assets, or items from other players' tableaus and put them into your hand or dispatch them. So as I said, they're trying to gain more cards on their tableau to gain that amount of power. You can opt to either steal them and gain them for yourself, or, like essentially you're hiring them or kidnapping them, or you can try and get rid of them. Picking a fight is actually fairly simple. And I'll kind of look at that with the picture over here, but winning a fight to nab. So if a player wins a fight, the winner keeps the defending card in their tableau. The winning attacker places a card in their hand. The winner also gains one of the following. All cards using a fight are discarded, but either player must spend their own verse tokens to retain cards 1 for 1. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, fighting is fairly simple. Again, a thief has a defense cost of 5 and is targeted. The fight attributes of Misbehave and IVA Dormunder play in the display area, and their asset having attack strength of 7. So 4 plus 3 would defeat the 5. Very simple. You're just picking someone to fight. But they're also showing that they're playing one card from their hand, and they're playing one card, moving one card from their tableau up. And then once this is there, it's going to get discarded like everything else. Winning a fight to dispatch. So an attacker wins, a card is discarded, the defender's recycle power. If the defender wins, a card remains on the tableau. So why dispatch instead of nab? So that's the big question. You have these two options. Sometimes you target a card if it is not really one you want to add to your deck, but remove it from another player's tableau to prevent a win. Might get rid of the ability they're using. It might keep them from gaining the power they need to win the game. You might not want it just because of the fact is maybe it's a character card and you don't have enough you don't need any more characters, or you have a ship and you don't need a second ship. You don't want to clog your deck up with cards you don't have. Yeah, a player defending card might not put as much effort into winning a fight if they know it won't end up losing the target card. So that's the big difference. If I'm stealing your card, you might play more cards to try and defend it and keep it alive. Just because of the fact that you don't want to give me an advantage of having an additional card. But if you know it's just going to be, oh, I have I put like a weaker card out just so I had a character, an asset out that I don't really need. Maybe I put a ship out and I had a second ship. You're going to destroy it, whatever. I have another one. You know it's going to come back eventually. So dispatching something might let you get rid of it easier than trying to nab it. Additionally, we can also make a deal. Final way to use your activation is to make a deal. If you want to make a card, if you want to add a card from the market or supply board to your deck. So this kind of works very simple. So in deal example, Paladin is played with a deal attribute, so it has a little deal attribute here. From the player's display, the influence of 2. Silver holders move from the asset area up. Also has a display of 2. And then they spend a credit to bring the total of 5 so they can buy a 5-cost card. Sometimes card effects will cancel a deal. You can cancel a deal immediately or wait to see how much influence or how many credits are committed to the deal before canceling it. When a deal is canceled, the activation is lost, but credits, verse tokens, used to make the deal are not. Any cards in the current display area must be immediately used for recruitment action if they have one, or discarded. So immediately spend another activation if you have gained a second one. The deal is to reattempt the deal. So someone else can go ahead and cancel your deal, which basically makes you lose. Either now you have to turn on to it, but you can't use your credits and your extra tokens. So we also have the ability to recruit cards, which works the exact same way here. So they played Shiny 2 influence from the display area. They played Kaylee from the command area for an extra one. And then they moved the Arbus from the asset area for 1. So it gives them a total cost of 4, so they can buy a Misbehave for 4. So again, here's the thing. We have kind of like fighting, nabbing and defeating. We have what's a recruitment different from a deal? Recruitment does not require an activation. Making a deal does. You only have that one activation point. So recruiting cards you can do as much as you want. But to make that special deal, you have to play a deal card and you get that. The other big difference is a card gained from recruitment goes to your recycle pile. A card gained from a deal goes to your hand. So I could spend an action or an activation to make a deal, purchase a card, and now I get it right to my hand. I can use it immediately to help maybe recruit more stuff. And you may not use credits in a recruitment deal. So you also use extra ways to purchase stuff. So it's kind of just a thing. You can do one deal, gets you a little bit extra options, but you might want to do something else. Then we have verse tokens. You can acquire 1 verse token on your turn by following both steps on the top of your faction's verse card. Only acquire 1 verse token per tone. Once you have all 6, you can't gain any more. Some episodes require to use verse token to track progress. If you complete a step of an episode's win condition and not have a verse, it does not count as having it. It's also neat. So, you have to kind of balance your acquiring of these with doing some of the other stuff. You can spend verse as following ways. You may even spend them on other players' turn to retain cards. So verse tokens are very powerful to get. Each faction earns them differently. So you can use them as influence in deal and recruitments, as progress on reaver cards, on verse actions on other verse cards. You can replay. You can spend verse tokens to replay a maneuver card, or retain cards after a fight or a deal. So that's very helpful too. Like, I made a deal, I spent a really good card. I can spend one of my tokens to keep that card rather than losing it. And that can be very helpful for supply cards because they go away anyhow. Issue a warrant if you're the Alliance. Tax if you're the Alliance. Steal credits if you're eased down. Or re-trigger if you're Niska. And then we have our supply sets we mentioned. So like recommended ones they're going to tell you to use. But yeah, we kind of mentioned that. You gotta play different ones each turn. Some cards have supplies like Fighter Deal. You only use 1 supply for its attribute effect or 1 special ability, but not both. Yeah, kind of cool there. Predetermined setups. So they tell you how to play them. You're always going to use the black. It's not a card you can recruit or gain a deal. Basically just kind of a bad card to have. We'll look at that when we get there. Maneuvers provide varying effects, none of which require activation. Many maneuvers have prerequisites required to have a card of a particular icon in your tableau. For example, some require a ship. And then every turn, you only play maneuvers on your turn or when you're in a fight. So it's whether it's triggered or not. When you play a maneuver, you may spend a verse token to immediately reuse the same maneuver, even for a different effect on that maneuver card. You may spend multiple verse tokens, use the same maneuver multiple times. So that can be pretty crazy. You can trigger something very much. So we have some other keywords. We have evade. Effect ends a fight immediately with no winner. the activation is use a fighter's loss. We have Cycle, lets a player shuffle the face-up market cards back in the deck and replenish it. Credits can be used in various ways. Triggering without effect. When you trigger a card in your tableau without using its effect, it does not cost an activation. For example, to trigger a location card in order to return the black to the supply, other game effects may cause a card to be triggered without an effect. You may re-trigger these cards only if they have the triggered ability. So basically, it's exhausting it, turning it sideways so you don't gain access to it, but you don't gain the ability for it. Alliance has warrants, which we'll kind of look at when we get to that. +1, +2 power tokens, just to show you increase something, and then replenishing the market. Alright, then there's some variants in here. You can play a variant with the Reavers, which is really fun. So before you start the game, players agree on which Reaver cards they wish to add to the game and how many. Reavers make the game much more challenging and longer. And they're just shuffled later into the deck. These events are events that all players must deal with. When one is drawn during the replenishment of the market, it occupies the empty spot in the market while in play. It affects all players on their turn. Reavers remain in play until they're defeated, either by successfully targeted in a fight or accumulating the requisite number of Earth tokens from any or all players. On your turn, you may target the Reaver in a fight. Their defense value is the top right of their corner. Or you can spend tokens. The other method is by placing burst tokens on them. Be warned, if multiple Reavers are revealed, their effects are cumulative. For example, one appears in border and then the recurring cards in the rim could result in revealing other Reapers. Not working together to overcome Reavers can be devastating. So that's actually kind of a neat thing. You can add it in there as an extra challenge, but it really messes with everybody. Then we have episode cards, which are also another variant you can add to the game. Episodes change the goal of the game, set parameters and other effects. Choose one at random following the instructions. The top portion of each episode outlines new winning conditions. Any setup instructions, the bottom portion do so. Setup supply. So you're going to have one that's going to say player determined. Market's only going to use square and circle cards. Or if we're playing Bushwhack, you're going to use these supply deck, but use the full market. So yeah, it's kind of neat. It's going to change up how you do different stuff. So that's kind of a neat little mechanic. Strategies, let's just look at these quick. Make use of your hand each turn to maximize all you can do. Don't waste influence if you can avoid it. Make a deal when you have some credits means gaining 2 cards on the same turn, especially when you gain a card with influence in the deal. Primarily focus on having cards with good influence in your deck. The first half, switch to gaining fight cards later in the game. Timing's important. Your burst actions allow you to change the tempo of the game. If you're planning on making a deal, definitely do so before using your recruit action. If someone cancels your deal, you still use any of your cards for recruitment. Resources, you can't win the game without resources and abilities. The supply market you should maximize your strategy. Beginning of the game, it makes sense to maximize the probability of getting cards with influence by playing cards with no influence into your tableau. This is also an interesting way to, if you have cards in your hand that aren't going to, I ain't gonna have cards that are gonna give me influence or very much. You have some good starter cards. Makes sense to try and put them on your table as quickly as possible. So here's a very good example. Is the first card we get in the Serenity deck is Browncoat. It has 0 power, so it's not gonna help you with your influence or your winning condition, but it has 0 influence as well. But it lets you draw a card each turn if you use that activation. Which you don't have to. But it doesn't. If the quicker you put that down and get it out of your hand, that's one less card you have to draw every turn. That's not going to help you do any of the other effects. This kind of just talks about each different one. I'll kind of hold these up for a sec if you want to pause and read any of them. It's just saying each one has different kind of ideas or agendas on what they should be doing. And then we have a ton of game terms. And there's on the back, just showing all our symbols, which is really super helpful. Alright, so the last thing I want to go for the rules, I just want to go over the quick start guide quick. I'm not, again, going to read through every single part, but I do want to show how cool this actually was. So, they're setting this up as a 4-player game. To pick your favorite one, get all your stuff together, showing you how to set the game up, set the marketplace up, which decks to use. So if you're playing a 4-player game, this is actually kind of a neat way to like just start out the game. Even if you're only going to play a 2-player, I would definitely recommend reading through this. So we have 4 different options, so you can only do one of these. Activation, recruitment, verse, and spending. And then that's kind of what you can also do with your activation. So you can do these actions. You can do as many. You can only do some of these so many times. So activations are once per turn to do those. Recruitments are also once per turn. Verse acquisitions 1 per turn, and spending verse. Spending verse you can do as many times as you want, as long as you have tokens. So that's kind of the only one that's a little bit extra. And as I said, just kind of goes through. So this is a really neat way of doing it. So it's like on Serenity's turn, this is what they're going to do. So it's the start of their turn. Use my activation to play a card from my tableau. I'm going to choose by playing Zoe. Since she's a character, she goes into the command area, so they moved her there. So they played her there. But I can immediately trigger her for her ability as activation, but I'm choosing not to because I want to earn a verse. Look at the verse card. I need an untriggered character in my tableau. I check I need to discard 4 power from my hand or cycle, so I use the 2. You can't take me and this guys together. And that's 4 power, so they're discarding these 2 to trigger this ability to gain a verse token. Then they're going to do recruitment. So they're going to put those other 3 cards down here, so 2 and 1. Plus, they're going to move Zoe up there for 4 to purchase a Misbehave. And it says final Misbehave goes in my recycle pile, and now I have nothing else, so they draw 5 cards. So that's what they did. So it's kind of neat. So on their turn, they activated activation by playing a card, verse acquisition, and then they get a recruitment. The only thing they didn't do is spend their verse, because they're verse token. There just might not have been anything for them to do. And then if we get down like Eve's down turn, they're going to start off by recruiting right off the bat instead. So they're going to spend 3 to buy one of the couple of cards up there. And then all 3 cards go to the recycle pile. So they can recruit nutrition bars. Then they're going to do their activation. So they're going to play a card to their tablet. They play a henchman as an asset. So it goes into assets. I don't have anything left to do. Then their turn. So they only did get 2 things. This guy needs on Niska's turn. He's going to start right off the bat by, you know what? He's going to do an activation or trigger. Card can be triggered for one of its abilities. Let me discard a random card from another player's hand. So he's going to make the alliance discard a card. Then he does recruitment, spends some stuff, purchases some cards. He says, I can't acquire a verse because the torture is triggered. So that's having untriggered character card. So if he didn't use his ability, he could have ended up getting a verse token instead. But, you know, that's what it is. Sometimes you just do stuff in different orders. And then, like, the Alliance turn, they're going to start off by, because you only have 4 cards. So activation, I'm going to play a card, core space, tableau, asset area. I can't acquire verse because I have no characters. I have my Toku class cruiser in my other core space, which to influence and play this place, so I can afford a shiny, which costs 2. I discard the rest of my card and draw 5. So all he can do is activate and does a recruitment. And that's kind of neat. Then we go back through the Serenity's turn. They make a deal. So because they did a deal, they played these cards with the deal action. This goes back to their hand. So they purchased a Holbon Washburn, a wash card. Now they have them in there. And they spent a plays 1 verse, 1 credit, Malcolm, and Serenity. So they end up spending that because they're doing the deal. They could also use that credit in there to help them purchase it. But say there's nothing else they can do in that turn because they use their 1 activation card for the turn. So it's kind of cool. And then they redraw, and then we get the Eves down. He's picking a fight, so he picks a guy with a fight icon. Plays a henchman with a power of 2. To defeat, he's trying to nab the Torturer from Niska, who only has a the fight target token is placed on the targeted Torturer, so it gets put down here. Has a defensive 2, same as his cost. Niska plays a mercenary and a fight card with a 1 power, but his total defense to 1. So it goes 2 plus the 1 he played for 3, which is beating that 2. So then Eves down has to do something, so they spend 1 credit upping the henchman's power to 3. And then they add their henchman from the power to make it up there, so it's 3, 4, 5. And then that's enough to be able to beat that, so they get the Torturer, so it goes to their hand. She's got 1 card for the deck as a reward for winning the fight. The deck is reshuffled from the recycle pile, and Badger is drawn. Cool. So now he has a bunch of cards in his hand for the next turn. And that's kind of how this goes. Then he does a recruitment, because it's still his turn. He has all his extra cards, because he has all the extra ones he just purchased. So he does that, buys a card. And that's shown like later in the game. Starting to use their activation to trigger Mal, then uses your trigger ability to discard a card from their hand equal to its creditor. Then plays a maneuver at full burn. Let her draw a card, then discard a card. She can make another play, then add black to their hand or draw another card. Just showing them using a maneuver card in there instead. Activation with another fight. So doing another fight, just some more examples. I'm not going to go through all of this too much. But they added a lot more cards, moving this guy here, spending some tokens to gain stuff. Ends up being a lot more massive of a thing as the game goes on. Alright, so that's what we have for Firefly Misbehaving, the rules. Sorry, that took a long time. A lot of stuff to explain, but I wanted to make sure I hit a lot of the major points. So in the next video, part 2 of this, we're going to look over all the different cards, as well as the promotion market pack cards. See you guys there. Bye.